runway by signs with black backgrounds and white numerals. Let's take a look at some good and bad examples of pavement markings and signs. For example, this runway marking is neither clearly readable nor is it in good condition. But in contrast, a pilot can easily read this runway marking, which is standard configuration and standard color. This taxiway centerline could cause confusion since it was not clearly visible. But here's the same taxiway after it was repainted. Note that double-edged lines have been added to the side to mark the taxiway from the adjacent apron. Occasionally, pavement marking is inadvertently omitted after construction or maintenance operations. Consequently, a special markings inspection should be performed before the pavement is reopened. In summary, during your inspection of airport marking and signs, you should be checking for standardization of color, configuration, and readability. And your sign inspection should also include the operation of lighting, the correct orientation of signs and individual sign panels, and for damage or erosion around mounting stakes or bases. Remember, airport marking and guidance signs provide essential information to visual cues to pilots during critical phases of flight, as well as during ground operations, and therefore they are important elements of any airport self-inspection program. At night and during periods of low visibility, lighting is vital for safe airport operations. Lights come in different shapes, sizes, colors, and configurations, and can be located either in the pavement or along its edges. So let's run a checklist for the daily airfield lighting inspection. Alignment is particularly important for high-intensity runway edge lights because the lenses are designed so that most of the light goes toward the end of the runway, with very little toward the sides. If a high-intensity fixture is properly aligned but still seems dim, its lens might be improperly mounted. During the inspection, make sure that the runway lights are working at each of the brightness steps, and if the lights are power-controlled, they should be activated to ensure that this system is working. Any missing or broken lenses should be reported. Report vegetation or snow obscuring any light, as well as lenses that are dirty. Inspectors should be familiar with the color coding of airport lights since pilots rely on them for specific information. Any lights that are the wrong color should be reported at once. Runway edge lights are white, except on instrument runways where yellow replaces white on the last 2,000 feet or half the runway length, whichever is less. This creates a caution zone for landings. In the opposite direction, the yellow runway lights are white. When viewed from an approaching aircraft, threshold lights are green to indicate the beginning of the runway. But when viewed from the aircraft taking off in the opposite direction, threshold lights are red and taxiway edge lights are blue. Edge lighting for a displaced threshold is somewhat complicated since the area between the threshold and the pavement area is not considered to be usable runway for approaching aircraft, but it is considered to be runway for other operations. For this reason, it's necessary to use several split lenses. For example, lights along the pavement edge in this area show red toward the approach and yellow in the opposite direction. The lights on each side of the displaced threshold show green toward the approach. The light closest to the pavement shows yellow in the opposite direction, while the outer three are blacked out. And lastly, the 8 lights at the end of the pavement show red in all directions. In pavement lights, which are installed on some instrument runways, are also color-coded. For example, touchdown zone lights are white. Looking from the landing threshold, the runway centerline lights are also white until the last 3,000 feet of the runway. Then, the white lights begin to alternate with red for the next 2,000 feet. And finally, the last 1,000 feet of centerline lights are red. In the past, taxiway centerline lights were all green, but under a new international standard, the green lights will alternate with yellow ones on the runway side of the taxiway hold line. Now remember, a lighting inspection should also include the edge light mounts to make sure their breakaway feature isn't compromised. It's important to report any mounting stake or concrete base that's above grade level, and remember to report any excavation around the edge lights that has not been backfilled. Your daily lighting inspection should make sure that all lights are in place, are working, and are properly aligned, that the lenses are not broken or obscured by dirt, vegetation, or snow, that all lights are properly color-coded, and that the bases for all edge lights are at grade level. The lights should be operated at each of their brightness steps, and when they are designed to be radio activated, this feature should be checked as well. Lighting is a very important airport safety element. Without it, at night or in poor visibility, pilots lack a major source of vital information. Depending on an airport's size, navigational aids may vary from a simple windsock to a very sophisticated instrument landing system, which allows operations to the lowest minimums. Operation, maintenance, and inspection requirements of electronic navigational aids are not covered in this presentation. While some visual aids may be owned by the airport operator, others may be owned by the FAA, the military, or others, and it is the owner of the navigational aid who is responsible for making sure that it is working properly. The inspector should include these aids in his daily inspection and report deficiencies to the owner so that they can be repaired. The daily inspection should concentrate on the visual navigation aids owned by the airport operator. For example, the rotating beacon, the segmented circle, the wind cone, runway end identifier lights, REILs, and the visual glide slope indicator system, VGSI. The rotating beacon shows the airport's location and therefore should be checked daily to make sure it is working properly. A segmented circle should be clear of vegetation, dirt, or snow so that it can be easily seen from the air, since it helps the pilot find the wind direction indicator. And also, erosion can displace circle segments, so you must be alert to this possibility as well. Wind direction indicators, such as the wind cone, give pilots important information for landing or takeoff. The cone should be inspected daily to make sure it swings freely, and if lighted, that all lights are operating. Runway end identifier lights, or REILs, provide the pilot with a rapid and positive identification of the approach end of a runway. Daily inspections of REILs should ensure that each light is flashing. Since REILs are placed in safety areas, they should be mounted so that they can break away, and their bases should be at a grade. And any obvious misalignment of the light fixture should be reported. Periodic investigations should be made to check for proper horizontal and vertical alignment. Visual glide slope indicators provide pilots with valuable landing information. VASIs, PLASIs, and PAPIs are common types of visual glide slope indicators, and as part of any daily inspection, should be checked to see that their lights are in working order. And since they are located in safety areas, they too must be breakaway mounted and the bases at grade level. Any obvious misalignment of the support structure should also be reported. And as a part of your periodic condition inspection, the correct angle of the glide path indicator should be checked using the proper alignment equipment. Remember that the daily inspection of navigational aids should concentrate on the visual elements that are owned by the airport operator, and the inspection should focus on examining the aid to see that it is working properly, making sure that it is not obscured by vegetation or snow, that any associated lighting is working, and that there are no obvious misalignments of the navigational aid. Obstructions on or near the airport can be serious safety hazards and could require issuing notices to airmen, the displacement of the landing threshold, adjustments to the landing minimums, or even the shutdown of navigational aids. Trees and other vegetation near the airport that could affect glide path angles should be surveyed as part of your periodic inspection. While permanent obstructions are a concern, the daily inspection should concentrate on a visual check for new construction underway near the airport that could affect airport operations. Particular attention should be paid to cranes being used at nearby construction sites. Any person proposing construction near a public use airport must notify the FAA. And there have been several instances where the FAA has received notification of building construction but has not been advised about tall cranes being used. Clearly, a crane can be as much of a hazard as a building. Upon notification, the FAA performs an analysis to determine what effect the proposed construction would have on aircraft operations and what measures should be taken to mitigate any negative effects. Many builders, however, are not aware of these notification requirements, so it's important for the airport inspector to take note of any construction activity near the airport that might require FAA analysis. In summary, a good airport inspection program should ensure that any construction noted by the inspector has been reported to the FAA. Also, any faulty off-airport obstruction lights should be reported to the obstruction owner so that they can be repaired. Airport operators have the responsibility of making sure fueling operations comply with regulations and are conducted in a safe manner. Continuous surveillance of fueling operations should be practiced. Periodically, fuel trucks should be inspected, but the inspection should concentrate on the fuel farm and should include security, fire protection, and general housekeeping. As far as security is concerned, access should be restricted to only those persons authorized in the fuel farm. So the inspection should include checking to make sure there are appropriate signs and that all gates are closed and locked. In addition, all lights in or near the fuel farm should be checked. And the inspection checklist should include making sure that no smoking signs are posted, since fire and explosion are the two biggest worries. Fire extinguishers should be readily available and should be checked to be sure they are BC rated and that their seals have not been damaged. And finally, the inspection should include checking to make sure the bonding wire and clip are available and that they are in good condition. Also, check for the hydrostatic test approval tag. These tests should be conducted every 5 years. A poorly maintained fuel farm is a dangerous one. It should be clean and not littered with debris, and there should be no vegetation growing in or around the area. Obvious leaks or fuel spills should be noted and reported. The pipes in the fuel farm should be clearly labeled and correctly color-coded to indicate the type of fuel. In summary, security, fire protection, and general housekeeping are the three primary areas you should be aware of during the fuel farm inspection. When it comes to protecting against fire, nothing can be taken for granted. It's no secret that snow and ice can create very hazardous conditions at an airport. It's the inspector's job to identify dangerous conditions so that they can be corrected. Or if the problems are so severe that corrective measures aren't possible, the inspector's observations become the basis for issuing notices to airmen, or NOTAMs, or even closing the runway. As an inspector, there are a number of conditions you should be looking for. First, there's ice or snow on pavement surfaces, which could cause reduced aircraft directional control or even alter braking effectiveness. Then, there's the possibility that lights and signs might be obscured by snow or damaged by snow removal operations. Snow banks or snow piles next to the pavement can create problems with wingtips or engine clearances, or they may block access routes dedicated for airport rescue and firefighting vehicles. And foreign object debris, particularly chunks of ice, may be left on the pavement after snow removal operations, and snow that accumulates around electronic navigation aids may interfere with their signals. Since winter weather doesn't run on any regular schedule, one daily inspection probably isn't enough to make sure your airport is safe. Several special inspections may be needed until the situation is back to normal. Inspectors should report any snow or ice on pavement so that crews can either remove it or use approved abrasive materials. Removing snow or ice from the pavement is one thing, but if that operation covers runway or taxiway lights or airport signs, another hazard has been created. Lights and signs that a pilot can't see don't mean much. Check to make sure nothing has been covered over or damaged during snow removal operations. Remember that the inspector should also check to make sure snow removal operators have not blocked any access routes that are dedicated for airport rescue and firefighting equipment. Similarly, snow depth should be checked in critical areas around electronic navigational aids to ensure that the snow doesn't interfere with the signal. Looking for various foreign objects after snow and ice removal operations should be an important part of your special inspection. Even sand from ice control operations can accumulate on the pavement. So obviously, any debris should be removed before aircraft operations are permitted. In summary, your ice and snow inspection checklist should include identifying slippery pavement, making sure all lights and signs are visible, being alert to snowbanks on or near the pavement, making sure snow doesn't block access for airport rescue and firefighting vehicles, checking to be sure snow hasn't interfered with navigational aids, and looking for foreign object debris on runways and taxiways. But when any hazard created by winter conditions can't be corrected immediately, appropriate NOTAMs should be issued. Safe aircraft operation can be affected by construction activity. When there is construction at your airport, the daily inspection should focus on it to be sure that a high level of safety is maintained. Continuous surveillance are the watchwords. Any construction project should have a safety plan as part of its plans and specifications, and the airport inspector should become intimately familiar with it even before work begins. Although the safety plan may identify the resident engineer, the contractor, or someone else being responsible for construction safety, it's the job of the airport inspector to be able to recognize any hazardous conditions. A construction crew is usually not familiar with aircraft operations or other airport procedures, and consequently, a number of hazards can be created. Inspectors should make sure that the contractors and vendors comply with prearranged vehicle parking requirements, and that vehicle movements on aircraft operating services are kept to an absolute minimum and are restricted to well-defined paths. Stockpiled material must be in approved storage areas and should be definitely clear of aircraft operations, navigational aids, and other critical areas and facilities. Construction materials must also be stored in such a way as to keep them from being moved by wind, jet blasts, or prop wash. Construction areas should be identified with conspicuous markings and lighting. While a given area might be obvious during daylight hours, special night inspections are necessary to ensure that lighting is adequate to keep aircraft away from the site, and at the same time, make sure that no construction equipment is parked outside the prearranged areas. In this case, note that the